keep in mind, this is James Jones yesterday on Fox Sports 1 on Speak.
Let's just get this straight. Number one, they put in a flop rule in the NBA because you guys are soft.
Oh, no. Oh, God. See, now you guys started.
You guys started a trend of rest games. That's what y'all started. And now y'all want extra votes and all that type of stuff to win the MVP because you only play 22 games out of 82. Y'all started that, so y'all all sorry. Number two, you said 30 dudes. If you would have said one dude, maybe Anthony Edwards could play safety or something, I'd have listened to you or something like that. You said 30 dudes. No. Number one, put respect on our sport. That's number one. It is not just run and catch the ball and turn around. It ain't just hand the ball off and do that. It takes a lot of work at your craft to do what we do on the football field. And Austin Rivers, if you stepped on the football field, homeboy, you wouldn't make it. Oh. We know that right now. Because you barely made it in the NBA. And I'm just keeping it a buck. Football is not an easy game, dog. That's why a lot of football players, basketball players that stepped on the football field, step right back on the basketball court because it's not an easy game. It's a lot that goes into the NFL. And you're not about to walk into the NFL and think you're just about to catch and turn around. Try again, homeboy. Do your research on the NFL, man. Watch some football games, old games, new games, whatever you want to watch, and catch up on it, man, because 30 dudes in the NFL and the NBA ain't doing that, homeboy.
Okay. I played basketball against James Jones. He's actually pretty good. But the problem is that James Jones, in order to play like he'd want to play, like at a high level in the NBA, he's too small. He actually made Austin Rivers' point for him by saying, you want to tell me Anthony Edwards, one guy. Okay, go through the teams. Give me a team, I'll tell you there's a guy. There's 30 teams. He's talking about one guy on a 15-guy roster. All the NFL players want to be NBA players. They do. The problem is most of them too small to be NBA players based upon their skill set. Very, very few. Right? Whereas I could go through an NBA roster, right? I mean, Oklahoma City Thunder, Keontae Johnson or Jalen Williams probably could. The Dallas Mavericks, Omax Prosper, like, dude, 6'7", 230, freak athlete. Yeah, that dog at Hunt. Heck, look at the Knicks. OG, maybe. Josh Hart. Like, you mean tell me Josh Hart couldn't play football? He's scared of contact? Oh, yeah, by the way, they put in a flop rule. Well, what's the NFL done recently? How tough is the NFL? No more two-a-days, limited contact in practice, and, oh, yeah, by the way, like, all of the nasty, jacked-up shots from our childhood are gone. Can't hit quarterbacks below the knee, above the neck. Everything's a flag. Like, what are you talking about? This is a societal move, not just a basketball move. 30, a bit ambitious, but the idea of one guy per roster, he's much more right than he is wrong. Let's bring in John Middlekauff, who used to be a scout in the National Football League. John, I ask you because I have a friend who's a GM who has asked me every year, hey, when you go to a basketball game, find me one per game. And he's like, look, there is, in addition to the requisite size, speed, skill, overall athletic traits, the other part you need is to have played football growing up. Because you can't just never play football before. There is technique to it. And even that, it's going to take a lot of work, but it could happen. What are your thoughts on the discussion?
Well, I think there are a lot of different variables here. If you just look, and I'm with you, the NFL guys could not transition to the NBA, right? I mean, Trent Williams, one of the biggest players in the NFL, he's like 6'5". Draymond's like one of the smallest bigs in the NBA history. He's like 6'5.5", right? 6'6". So the size element, I mean, Steph Curry would be the size of the majority of guys in the NFL, and he's 6'3", and he's one of the smaller guys in the NBA. But I think when you look at the NFL stuff, obviously there are a ton of guys. Some of these guys are too tall. We all know that. But any guy from, I would say 6 feet to 6'5", 6'6", you watch Tyrese Maxey or Russell Westbrook in his prime. Obviously, their athleticism is NFL. Like NFL teams, if they quit, when they were 23 and wanted to play football, every NFL team would work them out.
Yep.
Chris Long had a really good rant. I think if these guys played even if they didn't play in high school, they went out to college and started playing college and got used to the mentality of, in basketball, you show up for shoot around, and if you're a star, you don't have to show up. You play the game. In football, it's the grind. The training camp's obviously a lot different than 2-a-days, but it's still 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. for 35 straight days. And then once the season starts, it's basically a 6-day-a-week work week, 1 day off, and you play the game. So the culture and the difference, like, Pat Riley, he gives the best press conference of the year. Everyone's like, God, can you believe what he said again? That's like an NFL press conference from every coach on Monday. So the way that the culture of getting yelled at and coached hard is dramatically different, at least for the star players. I mean, young guys still get yelled at by coaches in basketball. But the physical toughness, you just wouldn't know if they liked it, if they would grind until they did it.
Sure.
Obviously, like, you can't watch Jalen Brunson and go, that guy doesn't have an NFL body.
He probably doesn't have NFL speed. Like, I would say more Josh Hart. And the right? Like,
Maxey would be a guy that jumped out to me just moving around. It's like, geez.
Yeah, I struggle with the guards because, it's position dependent. And I do think, look, there's a ton of technique that goes into, like, wide receiver, right? Like, people and those guys are absolute freaks. So there's very few positions that they can play. Like, that's why people think tight end, although the problem is there's a lot of technique in blocking that you can't just pick up, right? And with the exception of, like, if you're Travis Kelce, you can't, you got to be able to block. But, I mean, obviously, like Antonio Gates, he was a mid-major big guy. I think there's a ton of them in college basketball where you see a kid warming up and you're like, hey, bud, you should probably go to the other side of the street.
I think there are more in college basketball that could easily transition the undersized bigs. It's like 6'3".
I don't want to say the only word I would get away from is the easily transition. I don't think it's easy, but I think it could happen.
When I say easily transition, I would say attempt.
Yes.
The other thing that is a part of the argument that's just dumb because it doesn't exist is, when you were in the weight room and the football guys were in the weight room, you lift different. So their body types, by the time they're 25, I heard Coward say this, and he's right. Remember the visual of Michael Jordan, like, in his heyday in 94, standing next to, like, Barry Bonds? He was fit. And a lot of basketball players, because they're not lifting. If you go to an NFL practice, these guys are so much thicker because of the way they've been lifting squats, deadlifts, from really the moment,
no question.
Hard they got on the college team.
Okay, but like Zion Williamson, his body is a football body.
But he's just a rare body.
I got it. I got it. Listen, I just watched Lou Dort in person. It's an NFL body. Okay?
But Zion would be a good case, for example, of, like, wouldn't we question, like, I would say toughness, battling through mental toughness. Obviously, athleticism's there, and just natural ability to carry 300 like it's no problem.
Yeah,
that guy a football player? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, a defensive end where all you do is, you got to learn technique. All you got to do is go get up to the quarterback with that level of asset. Or
here's what I know: if Zion quit the NBA tomorrow and was like, I want to go to the NFL, 32 teams would work him out.
Correct.
And someone would sign him.
Correct.
Immediately.
And there is not. I don't believe there's an NBA player that would have the same opportunity. An NFL player that would have the same opportunity in the NBA. That's kind of what I was
small. Like, did you see the clip of, like, T. Higgins playing basketball? These guys were just like the difference of 6'3".
Well, Tyreek Hill could be an unbelievable defensive player, unbelievable, but he's tiny, and the requisite skill is too hard to catch up. They look like they're dribbling with their elbows, right? It's just there's too much skill with a ball in your hands. Right? It's a very different kind of athleticism.
Nate Robinson was a guy that did both.
Yeah.
Right. And look at his body type. Right?
Yeah. Again, he's a freak. He's an absolute freak, and probably should have played football. Might have had a longer.
I think and you know this, the football guys get really offended.
Yes.
Because it part about the toughness, but part about, like, you guys make all this money and half you guys sit out games, don't do anything. Like, it's just not allowed.
I got it, but it is hilarious, right? That whether they want it or not, the NFL has been made way softer in their practice. How much time they can, they can practice.
The players wanted it for sure.
They're sitting there going like, man, we're way tougher. Like, that's funny because you don't have 2-a-days anymore. You can't hit certain days, right? Your off week, you can't even come in to the office for a certain amount of time. And then during games, like, the other part I've always said this about LeBron James. People are like, LeBron James wouldn't want to get hit going over the middle. Nobody wants to get hit going over the middle. Nobody sits there and goes like, man, I woke up today thinking I was going to get ear holed, right? Nobody wants that. Period. Stop. The one thing I would agree with NFL players is it's very hard to play a defensive position because people think that there's a skill to learning how to hit people, and if you haven't done that for a long time, everyone thinks, well, then I'll just play defense so I don't get hit. Like, yeah, there's a lot more skill in that than you think.
Well, I think there's a level of, like, think about some of the like Travis Pastrana or some of the skiers. Like, how do you just pull the trigger on leaping over that? It's kind of like that in football. I mean, anyone that played high school football knows the first time you put on pads, you just kind of got it. You either got it or you don't, and that's a thing that separates guys pretty quickly. So
it's a great point. This is. I'm going to give what's it? A PS? What's a personal service? What's an announcement when?
PSA.
A PSA. Okay, a public service announcement. I understand that brain docs are telling you, like, don't have your kid play football until they're 14, right? That's the big thing. Don't have them play tackle football until they're 14. I disagree. And I'm telling you from personal experience, I want my kid playing at like 10, which he did, because I want him to get hit at 10. And if he comes to practice the next day after getting hit, if he puts on his helmet, shoulder pads, and says, I'm going for it again, okay, you can play football. If not, you don't want to do it, that's fine. Okay, but you don't want that to happen when they're 14, because when they're 14, they get hit by a grown-ass man. And that can actually do some damage to you, whereas when they're 10, you really can't. That's my PSA. Trying to think if there's anything football-wise I want. Other than that, I think it's such an awesome discussion. Truly amazing discussion.
I think a lot of guys, like the rookie mini camps are going on this week.
Oh, yeah.
And OTAs and all that stuff. I think a lot of NBA guys, that in the size range we talked about, would look fantastic. You just never know. The thing with, like, in basketball or even baseball, you could see a guy simulated AB hitting off a guy throwing 95. Like, oh, there's something there. Or basketball, watch a guy work out. In football, and I've gone to these OTAs for 15 years, even back to college. Like, you get some young guys with shorts and T-shirts. It's just the sport is only the sport when the pads are on, and you can't figure anything out until then. And even then, sometimes it takes some time getting used to. So there's just more unknown, I would say, in football. It's kind of unique that way.
It really is. Doug Gottlieb Show here on Fox Sports Radio. Okay, so I do have one. Kirk Cousins is miffed. Does it matter?
When you take the most money possible and you're willing to go whatever as you move around in your professional career, I would say any team sport, you just don't have as much equity. So, like, I don't feel bad for him. Like, he goes there. They're not. The money is his power. He's not getting the keys to the castle in the terms of they're going to do everything. We can argue till we're blue in the face if it was a dumb move, should they take the defensive guy? But, like, I think it's a risky move from the personnel standpoint of just making it weird, but I don't feel bad for Kirk Cousins at all. So, like, I understand the human being. Like, why didn't we just use that pick on a defensive guy? We had not a very good defense last year, especially when it came to turnovers, and we have no pass rush, and there was pass rushers on the board. But, like, I'm not losing sleep if I'm the Atlanta Falcons front office that Kirk Cousins is mad. Because the other thing is part of the reason we signed him, high-character guy. Like, what are you going to do, come in and act like an a-hole to him? Like, he's not going to do that. So it kind of is what it is. At the end of the day, it's like, hey, bro, we paid you $45 million to be the starting quarterback.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, listen.
But it gets back to he's not going to be at OTAs or he'll be there, but he can't really practice probably yet because of the leg. So all of a sudden, Penix is out there. Like, it was always going to be weird because of this situation.
John Middlekauff, 3 and Outs, the podcast. Make sure you wear your hat correctly.
I will. Bald guys, we don't follow the same rules.
What do you mean?
I mean, you guys have hair, what if we haven't shaved our head? It looks funny. It's just, we just have different rules. We can do whatever we want with it.
Oh, you can wear your hat backwards?
I can, yeah. I do sometimes.
I actually think Colin's missing it. Okay? The hat on top of the head is the worst look. With the hair in front showing is the worst look humanly possible. Nobody takes you seriously. You look like a dipwad. Yeah, you just do.